advantage in Washington, at least. I don't know how many states have adopted this, but for most of the United States, it is pretty much required if you start a business that one of your value sets be to that you are turning the most amount of profit that you can in the short amount of time as you can. That's like a requirement for business in our country, which is why we see things like the clear cut when people aren't considering the fact that we're running out of fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm.
If they were considering those things, and if they were considering the amount of effort that it takes for us to source our clothing and food from so far away, then deforestation makes no sense at all. But, ignoring those practical things and makes it so that this business structure that most of the country is running on around turning as much profit as you can in a short amount of time is actually not required in Washington. We can say that our number one priority is to increase the fertility of the soil, for example. And then we could measure that in number of inches of soil built per year, or number of microbes present in the soil through testing, or we could say that our number one priority is to increase the diversity of life, period, and measure that in microbes, plants, and animals. And so there's a lot of ways that we could go about that. But I also firmly believe that this way of living can also literally turn a greater profit. And so proving those kinds of things with numbers takes some effort and also some research, because it usually is going to take like 7 to 10 years in order for all of that to pan out from a perennial agriculture perspective on a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be another reason for choosing a site that isn't deforested, because in a site that isn't deforested, you can start to create revenue from the resources that are available, even through sustainable harvestings of medicine or propagating mushrooms or things like that. Whereas with the clear-cut site, we would need to outline our specifics in a much more careful and patient manner and be like, well, it might take 20 years in order for these trees to grow big enough to be producing enough that we can make value-added products and be selling them. And who knows what the world is going to look like in 20 years. But people right now want to see something written up in the way that people are thinking right now. And all I want to do is plant trees yesterday so that we have food.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's an auspicious time too, because like I hear you also sort of talking about with what's going on right now in the world too with the pandemic. A considerable amount of people have been paying more attention in this way that you're describing more and more, but it seems like we're reaching a point, like a threshold kind of in some ways where there's a value system, that's like, oh, wait a second, we're facing our mortality a little bit. We're facing sort of like what's essential, what matters. And, one of the interesting things about capitalism, as much of a beating as it gets, is that actually it's going to support whatever values people choose to support. And so if enough people are actually more interested in holistic living and being part of the cycle of life and death and healthy soil and getting the connection that people have been deprived of, and then it's quite possible. I think this is a really good time to be talking about these kinds of things and making them possible.
Yeah, there's really no getting back from here. The little nursery where I work as a part-time employee, our sales, I don't even think that we know the numbers yet, because we have hardly been able to keep up with the sales this year of plants. Like, we sell out twice a week, and are just more and more and more plants from local farmers and growers, and everyone is gardening this year. And even if the pandemic levels start to go down in the next couple of months, those gardens have been started. Mm-hmm. And no going back, I tell you, when you first start to cultivate food, it changes you. And all of those people that are just starting their gardens this year, and all of those people who are just waking up to remembering like, oh yeah, I used to garden like 15 years ago and now I have time. required by the government, so I might as well like pick that up again. Though the ripple effect of what has happened just out of our little nursery in Chimicum is vast, and I imagine that the same is true of every nursery across the country if they're allowed to be open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking as one of those people who finally started my first garden, like,
Yay.
I'm like, yeah, as soon as traveling is allowed, I would love to go to a place like what you're describing and spend 6 weeks, and like just how accessible that would be as a bridge.
Yes.
For people living anywhere to then also come to a place that's just fully integrated in that way, and then take away whatever tools they need to bring that way of living back.
Yeah.
So I think it's a wonderful vision, and
something practical that we also want to offer is it's usually preferable for people to die in their own homes. That's what happens a lot of times with hospice care. But if for some reason someone didn't want to die in their own home, or they just wanted another option, we've been looking into what would it be like to also if someone is going to be buried on the land and wants to die on our land, how can we create a space in which people can experience their hospice time and then their death also at this property, even if they don't live there.
Wow.
And then for family members who may be in really deep grief, that could be a time immediately after the death of someone in their family that they could embark on a 6-week stay on the land.
Wow. Wow. I mean, hearing that right now too, in this time where people are not able to even be with their loved ones as they're dying, it just, I mean, that like touches something really important. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know anyone right now that's going through that?
I've heard, like, some people who are acquaintances of mine have said that people that they know have died, but nobody that I know super close, except for one dear friend who had a dear friend in Spain actually, who died. But yeah, I mean,
I think just like thanking the water as a first step for all of us to choose to talk about death more and to share death stories with the same love that we share birth stories.
Right. And I mean, I love even just the image of like this piece of land, right? And I love what you say about how it's really anywhere. And there's something about like creating a space that's specific intention is to inspire the capacity in people to instigate that anywhere. And just to, I mean, I'm thinking of like when my dog died and my family like went out to Tumalo Creek and just like put pictures of her out on the dried leaves in the autumn and had a ceremony and just talked about her and how important she was to us. And this was years ago, you know. But just to think of this vision that you're describing of a place for those cycles, those deep life cycles, birth, death, and then like, and anyone can go there if they don't know how else to do it in their own way. Here's a place they can like be supported to learn how to do that. And then right alongside that, a retreat center where people are actually like spending 6 weeks to kind of like immerse in the life and get closer to it and touch it and smell it and taste it, and then go home and like expand that to wherever they go. And then people who are doing the in and out, chopping wood, carrying water of what it looks like to be, whether it's reforesting, if you end up being able to do this land that's deforested, or just like thriving and integrated in the abundance of what it looks like for people and that they have been doing for centuries before this relatively recent modern period of time, which were like just reintegrated into the cycle of life.
Yeah.
And that it's just a normal thing. It's both profound and like ready for those sacred threshold moments, and also just so simple. Like it's just like, yep, I'm gonna go out and pick what's in season and make soup and feed the retreatants and, you know, move the maple tree out of the raspberry.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I feel grateful for this time of just being able to be in the sacred pot with you, hearing and stewing in the vision. Is there any sort of, well, actually, here's a funny, okay, take this as you want. One funny thought I had, fun, interesting, sort of quirky in the moment, closing thought was like, if maybe you already have an idea for like a name or a dream name for this place, or you do? Yeah?
Oh, no. Sorry, I thought you said you do.
Oh, I don't. No. Well, I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask if there is one or was one, and even if not, like if we could like take a moment in this beautiful way that you invited us at the beginning of the call to sort of open our awareness and to bring in the voices, to see if there is like just like an encapsulating sort of jewel of something that wants to come through like from this land to help us close the time.
Yes. Also, we've just been joined by the resident three-legged fluffy black cat.
Oh, look at that. Well, maybe that's it. The fluffy black cat has the wisdom. That about says it, doesn't it?
Yeah. It is our natural inclination to nurture and be nurtured.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a statement. It is our natural inclination to nurture and be nurtured. Hmm.
She knows exactly what she wants.
Well, Hannah, thanks for being willing to share this even in a more focused way, like the specifics of what you want. And I know that what you want is intimately connected with, because you are so tapped into the web. And so it's really wonderful to hear the voice of that coming through a particular voice, which happens to have a really important vision for the world that I'm looking forward to seeing unfold.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time and helping us keep on track.